Hello, everybody. Um, it's me, it's Darylyn. A lot of you who have been following my Instagram or if we're friends on Facebook and whatnot probably already know what this is about. And I felt like I needed to kind of give an update on this to everyone and also to kind of answer all the questions that I'm sure people are undoubtedly going to have all at once and in one place, so that if anyone's curious, they can potentially have their questions answered, and also just to hopefully get a little bit of catharsis for myself and kind of that last bit of closure. Unfortunately, Pippa, my dog, my little Shar-Pei, she's been featured on the channel quite a bit since I started it a few months ago. She passed away on Friday. This was very sudden. It happened really, really fast, but it wasn't completely out of the blue. And I will explain more as to why that is in a minute. But she unfortunately did pass away. She would have been 2 years old on October 4th. We're clearly very devastated. It was very quick and sudden. We were definitely not expecting to lose her before she turned 2. You know, other people who are familiar with the Shar-Pei breed know that it's not unheard of for them to have some issues and maybe not live as long as you would of course want them to. Essentially, what happened was that Pippa has had a condition since she was born, but we saw the first signs of it when she was about 10 weeks old. She eventually was diagnosed with a condition that is prevalent in the Shar-Pei breed. It's an autoimmune condition called Shar-Pei fever, also called swollen hawk syndrome or familial Shar-Pei fever. It is something that is an autoimmune disease that, as of right now, the best research they have available shows that this disease is actually associated with the gene that gives the Shar-Pei their wrinkles. So the wrinklier the dog, the more likely they are to have this issue because they have more copies of the gene that gives them the wrinkles and therefore increases their chance of having the illness. So Pippa has had Shar-Pei fever since she was little. And it's not something that very often presents in the dogs at that young of an age. From what I've been told by all the vets that we've talked to and all the research I've done, it doesn't usually start to present until at least 18 months of age, and much more commonly so, it's dogs that are much older, from what I've been told by different vets. So what does that mean? What is Shar-Pei fever? Essentially, what happens is that the dog's body and the dog's kidneys can't process amylase, which is a type of protein. And this eventually, builds up in the body and causes inflammation. There's not a ton known exactly on like the causes and the ins and outs of this disease because, it does only afflict the Shar-Pei breed, and the Shar-Pei breed is very small. It's very rare. Not a lot of Shar-Peis are out there. If this afflicted Labradors or Golden Retrievers, then there would probably be a better understanding of it. But this buildup of this amylase protein in the dog's body that's not processed causes inflammation, and sometimes dogs with this condition have intermittent episodes where they will get a very high fever, they will get pain and swelling in their hocks, which are the knees on the back legs, and a lot of pain in the back legs. They'll get really hot, they'll pant, they'll just generally be very, very, very sick. And Pippa started getting these when she was, like I said, the first was at 10 weeks old, and she got a few more a few weeks later, and then it kind of would be every couple of weeks until she was about 6 months old. And then that is right when James and I were both working from home full time because of lockdowns. And so we were with her all the time, 24/7. And once that happened, her episodes completely stopped. So the last fever that she had prior to this week was when she was about 6 months old, was really bad. Generally, when I would notice that she was starting to have a fever, which there were telltale signs, like her mouth would get really sensitive, she would start shivering. I had a treatment regimen that I worked out with her vet, and that consisted of administering an anti-inflammatory to bring down the fever, and then also pain medication to help with the pain from the swelling in her legs. And I had experienced a lot of success with this, to the point that for, a while, as long as I caught the fever right when she started to shiver and gave her the medication, she wouldn't have one. She would just kind of feel a little crummy for a few hours, and then she would be feeling a lot better, and then by the next day she was fine. So we definitely thought this was amazing and that we had it under control and it was going to be fine, and we would just continue to do this. Unfortunately, the second to last fever she had, it's possible that I miscalculated. It's possible that it was just the disease progressing and there was nothing else I could have done, but I did catch the fever earlier than usual. I caught it before she started shivering, when just her face was getting sensitive. Administered the medication. She bounced back super fast. By the end of the day, she was feeling fine, jumping around, back to normal, and I thought that I had absolutely nipped it in the bud. But unfortunately, the next day, I found her laying in a corner alone, and her legs were blown up like balloons, and she was clearly in a lot of pain. And I took her temperature and it got up to 106, and my vet had always told me that 106 is where organ damage can start. So I panicked and I rushed her to the emergency room and had them give her fluids. That seemed to work. Like, her fever came down and she recovered from that really quickly. But a couple of things, though, is that the hospital kind of made me feel like I was overreacting, and that 106 wasn't really that high of a fever and it wasn't that critical of a situation, even though my personal vet and the internet everywhere says that 106 is where organ damage can start, and that a fever over 104 is an emergency. So they kind of made me feel like I shouldn't have brought her in with the fever at that level. And then she did bounce back really quickly, and she seemed okay. And then after that, there was a very long stretch of time where she didn't have any fevers at all. 18 months. Wonderful period of time where she seemed to have really good health and, be really enjoying life. So I'm very grateful that she got to have that and we got to have that with her. But it's possible that because her fever did go over 106 briefly at that time, that maybe she did sustain some minor organ damage that could have made her more susceptible to catastrophic outcomes in the future under the same circumstances. So that kind of brings me to what happened this past week that led to her ultimately passing away. She started to shiver on Thursday morning, and so I immediately administered the treatment regimen with the medication that I always had. And because in the past I had always seen her recover from taking those steps, I wasn't really that worried about it. And the thing about the anti-inflammatory medication is that it's a 24-hour dose. So once you administer the first dose, you can't give them more until 24 hours later. So I gave her the dose and then kind of, expected to just see her kind of lay around for a few hours and then she would be fine. But unfortunately that night, her legs started to swell a lot and she was clearly in a lot of pain. And so I gave her more pain medication and was continuing to take her temperature, and it was still in, the safe zone as far as I had been made to believe by the vets that I had spoken to in the hospital in the past. But unfortunately, overnight, in the middle of the night, her fever got to almost 107. It was about 1:30 in the morning, and I called the emergency hospital, and they didn't seem to think it was a very serious situation. They told me that the wait to get into the ER was 6 hours, and it just they couldn't get her in. They said they had a hospital they could recommend that was really far away. And honestly, like, there wasn't a lot that they would have been able to do anyway. Like, really the only thing they would have been able to do would have been give her fluids. And honestly, at that point, I don't know whether that would have made a difference or not. And the emergency vet that treated her on Friday made it sound like he didn't think that it would have made a difference. So, I was doing everything I could, like putting ice packs on her, getting her wet, giving her water, putting her next to a fan, and her fever did start to come down. And so once it had come down a bit, we went to sleep. We were exhausted. And then the next morning when I got up and was going to give her her second dose of medication, I noticed that her skin from her rib cage down to, the tips of her toes, of her back legs, had turned dark purple to the point that it was almost black. And that was when I knew that she was in trouble and this was very, very serious. And I was trying to stay calm and not jump to conclusions. But at this point, this is where deep in my gut, I knew that she was probably dying. And so I called her vet. They got me into the first available appointment. Her vet looked her over and remarked that she was tachycardic and that she was afraid that the discoloration on her skin was septic inflammation, which is extremely serious situation. So they transferred us to another hospital that I didn't know was actually pretty close to where we lived. We probably could have taken her there the previous day. And yeah, they rushed her in on a gurney, and we were, trying to, like, the vet assessed her, and then we, discussed her condition, and he said her prospects for recovery right now are very guarded. We're going to hospitalize her overnight and, see how it goes. And we were dealing with insurance. It was pretty standard for what happens in these situations. I don't know if anyone's, had their dog hospitalized before, but that whole, like, all of that back and forth, that it honestly only probably took an hour and a half. And during that time, she got a bit worse. They had her in the back, and we wanted to see her before we went home, because at that point the plan was to hospitalize her overnight and have them monitor her and give her IV fluids and everything that they could do. When we went in to see her, they had her all nestled up in a little bed with a blanket, and made her really comfy. And I expected her to, be really happy to see us and, like, at least wag her tail and, like, open her eyes, maybe give my hand a little kiss or something. But she was completely unresponsive. Like, she was breathing clearly, but she 100% didn't respond. And I honestly don't know that she even knew we were there. So that was the point where James and I knew it was really serious, and where it started to sink in that she was probably gone. The vet actually originally had told us, you can come see her before you go home. But then after that, he told us to not leave. And I knew that wasn't a good sign. He told us that the test results that they did to see if she had kidney or liver damage or kidney or liver failure were going to be back in a few minutes, and that we should stick around. So we stuck around, and maybe 45 minutes later, I got a call from the vet, and he just said, "You guys should come back inside." And I knew that was definitely not good. So we went back inside, and the vet explained to us that since he had ordered the tests and given his initial examination, her condition had drastically declined. And he said that essentially her prognosis had changed from guarded to poor. Then he explained that he had seen what he believed to be signs that she was bleeding in her brain and essentially had had a stroke. And you know what comes next? At that point, we knew that the only thing that we were going to be able to do would be to let her go. And so we went into the emergency room. They had everything ready, and we got to see her. We were there. It was really sad because she at that point probably only had about a few hours left before she probably would have passed away on her own. But it just was very clear that she was probably in a lot of pain. And so, we just went ahead and released her from her pain. And, I'm grateful that we didn't have to make any hard decisions. It was all pretty much already decided for us. And I'm also very grateful that it was very, very swift and rapid. She wasn't lingering over the whole weekend and then, having to just put off the inevitable. There was no false hope. Her suffering was limited to the extent that you really could hope. So I'm grateful for all of that, because it just really was a lot easier than I thought it would be. It was tragic and it was hard. We were obviously crying and very distraught, but it was easier than we thought it would be. We didn't have to make any hard decisions. So that's what happened. In retrospect, if I could do anything differently, I don't know if I would, considering that the emergency vet told us that he didn't think, he was very, very accommodating, and he sat us down and went over what he thought had happened. And it was kind of the first conversation that I had ever had with a vet that was the level of a wake-up call as to how sick she had always been. In the past, when I talked to vets, they were always very optimistic, or they seemed optimistic and gave us, here's your treatment options and this, that, and the other thing, and always fawned over how cute she was. And, the emergency vet basically laid it out. And I don't know if he realized that we had really never been told this before, but he basically laid it out that this was going to happen eventually. Even if we had managed to get her through it this time, this could have happened in another 18 months or another 6 months or next week or any of the above. So I don't know. It's hard, but at the same time, there is a certain feeling of gratitude and relief that it happened as swiftly and quickly and clearly as it did. As you can imagine, this hit me kind of out of nowhere. We were aware that she had these health issues, but she had been healthy for 18 months, and I wasn't expecting her to just be fine on Wednesday and then be gone by Friday night. So this has kind of really set me kind of back on a lot of projects and a lot of things in a lot of ways. The plant shop has had a lot of different delays in kind of getting off the ground, but this is just another brutal punch to the gut. I'm just gonna kind of put a TBD on when that's ever gonna be starting up. We kind of spent the weekend with all of the, coulda, woulda, shouldas running through our heads, and I'm glad I don't really have a lot of regrets with her. We really did give her everything. We got her the best medical treatment that our financial means could provide. She got to be home with us 24/7 for the majority of her life. We took her on tons of fun adventures. She got to play with her friends every day. I guess if I had any regrets, it would be, I wish that I hadn't said at some point so much, oh, we should take her and do that at some point, or oh, we should go there at some point. One thing that James and I talked about this weekend that we, in retrospect, really regret not taking advantage of with her was her vet clinic at the end of 2019 had always put on a free Christmas party for all of the patients, and they had Santa paws and, someone dressed up in a Santa outfit, and, you could take pictures and it was free. And I really wanted to do it. That was back when she was just a tiny little baby, basically a squirrel. It would have been really cute, but I forgot about it for some reason. I think I might have had the flu. I got a really bad flu 2 weeks after we got her. It was brutal and horrible. So we didn't end up going. And at the time, I was like, oh, shoot, that's too bad. But, that's okay. We'll go next year. We'll have plenty of more chances to go. And there ended up not being a next year because of the lockdowns, because of the pandemic. So that was too bad, because now, there's not going to be a next time for her at all. Same with, we had always talked about getting cheesy professional family photos, and, we never got around to doing that either, partly because of lockdown, but also just partly because, we just never got to it, and we figured we had plenty of time. that would be my, I guess, advice to everyone out there who's still got their fur babies with them is, try not to put things off as much as maybe it's convenient to. Try not to say at some point so much. If something sounds fun and like it'll bring you joy, try and make a priority to do it, because you just never know when there's not going to be another chance one way or another. I just really like to thank everybody who has reached out to me. The overwhelming amount of support has actually been pretty essential in, kind of staying upright. It's helped a lot. I don't know, other people's grief may be different, but for me, it's helped a lot. So just, I guess, keep us in your thoughts. We always kind of knew that she wasn't going to be around for as long as, you would hope, but I didn't think it would be before she turned 2. I think I probably thought we would keep her till 4 or 5, maybe 6. We did work really hard to keep her on a special diet. She got tests in the spring and June, and they all came back looking really good. Her vet just told me that she wanted her to drink as much water as possible. So I just started bringing water with me, whenever we went out, and encouraging her to drink more water. And, she was just really sick. Like, she had always been sick. When she was a puppy, she was half the size of her siblings, and, she'd never been a very good eater. And I've never had a dog that wasn't a good eater before. And she had always been on the lean side, considering her size. And, the vets always just kind of told us, like, good job, her weight is so good, because Shar-Peis tend to be a little chunky if you're not careful. And, we just thought we were doing such a good job with her diet and exercise, but not eating very well and being thin are definitely signs that she could have been, sicker than we thought. Dogs evolved to hide their pain. So she could have been feeling not well for a long time, and, we would have never even known. If you're still watching this, thank you. I appreciate it. This is honestly, like, I don't really expect anyone to watch this all the way through. It was more just for me to kind of like officially close the book on her journey on the channel, because, she was featured here a lot, and, I had kind of really planned on, having her be a central character in the channel, and, it's just, it wasn't meant to be, so that's okay. I have to be okay with that's just not what was meant to be. Be patient. I don't know. I don't know if there'll be a video on Friday or not. I'll try. But if there isn't, like, this is why. And yeah, I get so many like nice comments from viewers and Instagram followers, and especially on her Instagram, of people just like really enjoying her. And, she was such a special little girl. She was so funny, and I don't think I'll ever have another one like her. So she's very special, and, always have a really special place, and she's irreplaceable. This is, I guess, officially closing the book on her journey here and with us. Hug your loved ones tight. For us, I definitely wish I had, been less lazy sometimes and taken her on that longer walk when I felt not really up to it, or played with her for longer, even though I was tired and needed to get back to doing something else. I don't really feel like I could have loved her more, so it's good that there's not a lot of regrets. But at the same time, of course, with the benefit of hindsight, can, find places where you wish you would have done more or better. So yeah, that's what's been going on for the past 4 or 5 days now. Just in case there's anyone else out there going through something like this, or afraid of going through something like this. The things that have been helping us in the past few days have been kind of allowing ourselves to wallow a little bit. A lot of people told me, like, oh, you don't have to rush into making social media posts. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't have to say anything. But honestly, for me, like, getting like the sad social media posts out of the way quickly was really, really helpful. And actually, as a little bit of time has passed, getting all of the condolences and the sympathy still kind of trickling in is harder. For me, it helped to just like dive into it, just like, not beat around the bush at all. And I made the sad social media post, and that actually was really cathartic. James and I have been off our phones the most probably that we ever have been, other than when we're camping places with no service. That's helped a lot. We have been going and taking walks to places that we used to take her, that she loved going. I've been finding it really beneficial to get a lot of the firsts out of the way. First walk to the park where I always took her. First time back to the dog park, I always took her. First time back to, this trail that she loved to go to. First time back to that mountainside that she liked to go to. That I really feel like has been very beneficial for me. Again, what works for me might not work for you. Everyone's grief is different, but I find myself just feeling like my heart full of joy, and just like it's a lot easier to remember the happy parts. That's what's helping me. I don't know. Something else I'm really grateful for is that even though this was just unequivocally like a tragedy and really not fair, and I could wallow in my anger if I was, compelled to do so. One thing that I am really grateful for, oh God, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm gonna pull myself together. One thing that I'm really grateful for is that caring for Pippa really led me down a really needed journey of personal growth that, even though she's gone, is still with me. When I got her, I was a very different person. I was very vain. I was, just very dissatisfied, feeling very unfulfilled, and looking for something to kind of fill that void. She came into my life at a time when I really needed something to help me grow. No matter what was going on and what was disappointing in my life, being her mom was something that I was always really good at and that I was always consistently nailing. And, that fulfilled me in a way that my job never did. I didn't have a career where I really felt I was making much of an impact on the world or anything. So, that growth is still with me. My priorities have changed. I don't really care as much about like superficial things. I'm still on a journey. I'm sure there's a lot of ways that I need to continue to grow, but the growth that came from her being in my life is still with me, and it always will be. Her illness took her from me, but nothing can take that from me. So it's just really, really bittersweet. It's mostly bitter, but there's a little bit of a silver lining in there too. I would have obviously preferred that I got to continue to grow with her, but trying to be grateful for the good things, because there was a lot of really good things. And I'm also really grateful that, she ended up with us, because it's possible if she had ended up with someone else who didn't have our financial resources or didn't have the time we had and the ability to pay as close attention to her as we could, or couldn't take on the burden of dealing with her illness when she was a puppy, when she was so sick, who knows what would have happened to her. So just trying to see the glass half full, and I think it is. I think the glass is half full. It's just that emptiness is really, really empty. So this has gone on a lot longer than I thought it was going to. I guess I had a lot more to say than I really knew. So I hope this wasn't too much of a downer. I hope if you had questions, they were answered. And that's how I'm doing. If this was helpful to you, then I'm glad. And that's just kind of where we are. So again, I appreciate everyone's kind wishes and words of support, checking in on us. And yeah, that's where I think I'm going to leave it for today. So have a good one, everybody. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.